Hello, welcome to the One Life Church devotional series where we cover the entire Bible in 20 months. Well, today's chapters are Luke 23 and 2 Chronicles 11. And in Luke 23, we going up the hill outside the great city of Jerusalem. So I thought I'd try and do that today myself. I'm on one of the main roads outside of Cape Town, as you can see. If this crucifixion was happening in Cape Town, I think we'd be going up a mountain much like this. Getting out of the city limits, going to a place where you're going to execute some criminals. And that is where we find ourselves in chapter 23 today. And so 23 says, Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said to him, "You've said so." And on that particular day, we see that Herod and Pilate become friends. Pilate sends Jesus to Herod because he hears he's from Galilee. And they puzzle over Jesus. Isn't it an amazing thing? Often enemies will gang up, won't they? And so the other personalities we have in this chapter are Barabbas. Remember, he had been put in prison for murder. And the chief priests and the Pharisees were saying, "Give us Barabbas, give us free Barabbas, free a murderer, just kill that one." And the authorities, both Herod and Pilate, were saying, "We find nothing wrong with Jesus. There's nothing wrong. We want just to flog him and give him back to you." They said, no, you kill him, you crucify him. And then there's this terrifying words. It says, their shouts prevailed. So Pilate decided to grant their demand. Jesus was killed because the crowd shouted loudest. We've just gone through local government elections here in South Africa. When the crowd shouts, they get their will. And if you were looking at this as a history book purely from a natural point of view, you might think, well, Jesus lost the plot here. God lost the plot. The crowd gets their way, but behind the scenes, God is busy controlling history. Jesus gave himself up. His life wasn't taken from him. He gave himself up as a sacrifice for us. And this is what he says. He says, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." At his very last, this is the description of Jesus dying on the cross. And these are his words. "Father, forgive them." Forgive who? The soldiers. Forgive who? The Pharisees. Forgive who? Pilate and Herod. They don't know what they're doing. Forgive them, Lord. I've come to die not only for good people, but I've come to die for Barabbas. I've come to die for Herod. I've come to die for Pilate. I've come to die for the Pharisees. I've come to die for those who are ganging up against me. And then darkness comes over the whole land. And the centurion looks at Jesus and says, "Surely this is a righteous man." And he begins to worship. Now, one of the Pharisees, his name was Joseph of Arimathea. He goes to Pilate and he says, "Can I please take down his body?" Now remember, the Pharisees were the ones who killed Jesus. But here's one that the love of Jesus broke in on, who got saved, risked his life, risked his reputation for the burial of Jesus. Well, as you read this, I don't know about you, but when I read the crucifixion again, I think of the horror, and I think of the innocence, and I think of the wonder of him dying for me. Well, in 2 Chronicles 11, remember, Israel is now divided. Rehoboam has got the two tribes in the south around Jerusalem, and then the rest are with Jeroboam, who's a godless man. And Jeroboam has set up calves for people to worship. And, God has basically handed them over. The people didn't want to follow God. So he says, well, you go follow Jeroboam and you'll see what happens. And you know what? I saw something I haven't seen here before. Is that the priests all said, we're not going to live in Israel. We're coming down to Judah. Because at least there's a temple there. And it says here that those from every tribe in Israel who set their hearts after seeking the Lord and they're trusting the God of Israel followed the Levites down to Jerusalem to offer sacrifices to the Lord. So they were godly people. There was a remnant in amongst the leaders that were going ballistic, the leaders that are losing their way, and they were coming down. We live in a time where there are Rehoboams and there are Jeroboams leading us. But God's call is through them. Men try to have their way. Men think they're winning. Men think they're crucifying Jesus all over again, but God is having his way, and he's calling you. He's calling you to worship him. He's calling you to surrender to him. Both these chapters, we see the hand of God behind the folly of men in terms of their leadership. Well, I trust as you read it, God ministers to you.